going to be that warning up front. I was not going to do an episode tonight, but I decided, since I have some extra time before work and Kareem was around, I believe he'll be joining here shortly. If not, we're just going to do this one solo. But I wanted to talk a little bit about what's going on right now in the media and just in general happening. And this gives me excuse to bullshit for a bit. So I sit down and talk. So we've got this shooting. I think that's the thing that's on everybody's mind. Everybody's talking about in the media. It's a bit frustrating. I wish the manifesto and certain details were available at this point, but they're not. So what we do know is that it seems as though there was some sort of target. This was targeted against Christians in general. A church was shot up before the school encounter, a school shooting took place. So clearly, that was the motive. And then you've got the fact that this is a female to male transgender, which is interesting in the line of things. You're talking about somebody who is, in my opinion, at this point, not in their right mental state. So, hey, look at that. Cream did show up. Perfect. Hey,
Really?
can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right, perfect. I was just sort of starting things off by talking about the topics I wanted to go over, but one of them was that shooting. Which I'm not going to bring up news stories for because I've been kind of inundated with them in the last couple months.
Yes.
I will, or a couple like hours just reading through all the stuff. But yeah, we can talk a little bit about that here a bit later. And
Sure.
then I guess what other stuff is in the news? We've got Trump's indictment not really happening, which I guess I haven't really talked about. Which that was interesting. I'm assuming that was because of either some pressure from Soros to have the person back down, or pressure from the person's from that DA's Alvin Bragg surrounding power players. So that's an interesting thing to take place, but there's not really much of a story there. I mean, that's just kind of what happened.
Yeah. No, I didn't really get uh too crazy with
Let me
like.
see what's trending on Twitter. That's always a fun gauge for the way that the world's fucking going. Yeah, and so we've got yeah, I think that shooting is probably going to be the main topic because there's a whole lot of stuff being talked about in that regard. Um, there's also a bunch of other stuff. Uh, so there's this whole shooting. I guess let's just talk about that first. We obviously this was targeted. There's the cops have already come out and said there was a manifest and things like that were found that had maps and detailed drawings of what they were going to buy and where and things like that. Um, at the same time, you've got the church that was shot at before the actual school, so it appears that they tried to attack a church, but instead went to the school because there wasn't anybody in the church. So cops responded a lot quicker this time. I watched the body cam footage. They did pretty decent job rushing in and just getting the job done and putting her down. So there was that. But then afterwards, you've got kind of this debate that has begun over, transgender people, firearms, the whole causation of everything. And so I think we'll talk a bit about that here because I think that's sort of the direction I'd like to go with it. This person got ventilated, so they're dead. So that's a good thing, and it doesn't have to be. And I am, there's that. But obviously, this is, You got 6 people dead, and that fucking sucks. The problem is it's like at some point you get a bit desensitized to it, where this shit keeps happening over and over again, and it's like, okay, well, you know, um, it's sort of back in the day where people used to say, I don't want to be a statistic. It's like these people are sort of slowly becoming a statistic. And everybody wants to blame that on firearms, but I think me and you both know that isn't the cause of this.
No.
In this shooting, you've got an AR present, but you've also got a Keltec Sub 2000, which is a 9 millimeter folding carbine rifle handgun thing. Takes Glock magazines. And then you've got a handgun. I'm not sure what the model was, but I'm assuming it's some kind of Glock or something along those lines.
I mean, it doesn't matter. Like it could be whatever. It's not the issue of the tool. I always find it interesting, regardless of libertarian or not, wherever you fall on the spectrum. I feel like government is when they're not evil, they're incompetent. If they're not both, and to me, it's very easy just to point at the tool, because you can point at the tool.
Well, they're already doing that with the AR.
Yeah, guns are bad.
Yeah, they're already doing that with the AR.
Like I remember
tons of articles.
Yeah, I remember people said cryptocurrency is bad to me because people can use it for bad things. I'm like, you think? Like, yeah, I was aware of that. Like, people use gold probably for malicious things too. Same with fiat. I don't particularly think the tool emulates the morality in any way. So that's one thing. Couple things are I question the official narrative because it's too ridiculous. Some of this stuff doesn't just add up, and that's my problem. Stuff doesn't add up too. Also, here's my thing with the whole like debate on I don't think transgender or whatever you are, if you target a certain group, there's an issue here, and I don't really like that people are like, oh well, they were trans, they were this, they were that.
Well, I think the debate comes down to this. It comes down to whether or not somebody who is on hormone blockers or hormones or taking steroids, things like that, who also has gender dysphoria, falls into the category of somebody who should not be buying a firearm from an FFL. Because in order to buy a firearm from an FFL, you fill out a piece of paperwork, and one of the things that you check on it is that you're readily cognizant, you're mentally stable. You haven't been admitted or diagnosed with any mental instabilities in the last 5 years, I believe is what it asks. And for instance, this person's 28. We don't know when they transitioned. They bought these guns recently. So there's an argument here to be made that, they lied on this form, or the person who sold them the firearms might not have been in the right. I get why people are going that direction, but I think my issue here is that I think mental illness is being used as a cudgel to steal guns from Americans, and it's happening all over the United States. Florida, Alaska has instituted a red flag law, unfortunately. There are states all over the place that have enacted these, and they're being done in Republican-supported states. This shooting is going to be used as a cudgel for the right and the left to take firearms rights from people, regardless of which side of the debate you're on here.
Yeah, that's
going to be the reality.
Perfect. It's almost the perfect thing for them because the
left is going to use this to trick the right, and successfully doing so already, into taking rights from Republican districts.
Yeah, I mean,
that'll be the result.
They always do that if they're not working together. What's interesting to me is when they're working together. I'm convinced the left and the right or at least Democrats and Republicans are working together.
Oh shit!
Most of the time. The only time, they'll fight amongst each other. It's like ape psychology. They'll fight amongst each other, but if a libertarian's like, can I be on the ballot? It's like, let's hire police to harass them. Let's do everything we can to stop anything. Or if the Green Party, which poses no threat, like they get a whole 0.2%. oh, let's kick the Green Party off. We can't have Jill Stein. Well, I meant it actually the anti-war rally. I said hi to her. She's cool. We can't have the Green Party anywhere. So yeah, they'll attack anything. When you, and as far as hormones, they can affect a little bit of what you do. They do affect like your happiness or sadness. They can affect this. I've never like yeah. I guess you can have gender dysphoria, take hormones and stuff like that. I don't think they make you rampantly violent or anything like that.
No, well, that's not even the argument. The argument is like any of these things can affect your judgment. And so the ultimate, I guess the debate comes down to whether or not that classifies as some sort of disorder or issue or something that might exclude you from firearm purchases. I don't necessarily believe that at this point, and I don't think there's much evidence to support it. But I do think that the reality is an FFL supplier, an FFL, has every right to turn someone away. They do not have to sell a firearm to you.
Yeah,
It is
yeah. Well,
completely their right to say no. So I think the reality is in areas in red states, you're going to see across the board privately owned establishments refuse to sell firearms to transgender people. And it's going to be public. They'll post it on the fucking door when you walk in. And legally speaking, I don't think there's a way to stop them from doing that. This is another bake the cake issue. And I don't think that it will work out in the way that the left thinks it will. But I do think it will lead to the right pushing through legislation that will ultimately regulate things that shouldn't be fucking regulated. It will result in thousands and thousands of people having their firearm rights taken away, or it will result in red flag laws being put in place that are easily applied to people who fall into the transgender category,
yeah.
which is what I think will happen in a lot of these more right
Yeah,
states.
no, I think that will happen. They'll like, oh, this person transitioned. They're
I've got to take this call 1 second. Go ahead and talk.
okay. So yeah, it could happen that hey, this person transitioned. Okay, they're acting a little crazy, and then they use red flag laws or things like that. So that's another issue that we could see. There's a lot of problems that I potentially see the Democrats and Republicans coming up with here, and then causing just across the board. And even worse than that is people are falling for this already. People are getting defensive. It's also very good in my opinion. I don't know how far you go down with conspiracies, Leighton. I don't think you're as crazy as me. But there's also another issue independent of the firearms. And to me, I think it's quite a simple issue, but people can't seem to kind of figure that out. And that's like divide and conquer. Because now people are sitting around and saying, oh, I'm a Christian. I'm on this side. Oh, transgender people are declaring a war on me. So what the elite does is say, oh, let's put up all these headlines. Oh, transgender here, Christian here. Oh, these people, they're declaring a war on you. We need, and then get people on one side. We need to get back to America and family values and get rid of this. And one people like, look, the trans, population is all under attack. There's there's genocide. They're coming after us. Let's get them. And it's a very good divide and conquer tactic. The problem is people fall for it a lot.
Well, I think it's a futile advance at the end of the day because you have a certain bit of orthodoxy set in on either side that will never budge, and so it's become a voting block, whether you want to refer to it that way, but it's become just a cudgel for both sides to use, and so it benefits both sides to continue to use it, and so
Yeah.
unfortunately, I don't see this shit stopping,
But
and
that's
I
how
think it
divide and
ends up,
conquer works. So
yeah,
you get
it's
people who
gonna.
are very adamant on one side, like people are like, you can't reject BLM no matter what. You can't reject Ukraine no matter. Zelensky can get time, whatever. You just have to. If Zelensky comes and says, I'm going to take your house and take your dog and take everything, you just got to agree. Come on. You can't. What are you, pro Putin? And then the other people are just like, no, everything Putin's ever done is great. And you have people on very strong dialectics, and then they fight each other, and then they sit there and go, oh, my side's always going to be right, and then they pull people, the extremes pull people to polarities, and that's how I see the divide and conquer agenda working. To me, this is A, taking gun rights away, and B, a very good divide and conquer agenda, which, let's face it, that's how people stay in power. You're not going to pay attention to the person in power if you think that a certain subgroup or a certain group is going to come after you. Like, I mean, that
Well, yeah.
they do that all the time. Like, oh, okay, Ukrainians got to fight Russians, Israelis got to fight Palestine. And I used to come down on sides, and I'm like, actually, if you guys got away from your governments, you could solve this problem. But
Yeah.
if Christians are fighting people who are transgender, well, you're just not looking at what the ruling class is doing. Oh, or you're listening to this half of the ruling class agrees with me. They'll say me. I'm a Christian. The Republicans got my back. Oh, I'm a Democrat. Or I'm a trans person. The Democrats got my back, and that's how I feel they perpetuate divide and conquer. You can correct me if I'm wrong.
No, I mean, I think that's what's happening. I think it's sort of the malice approach to it, where it's like, yeah, eventually the Republicans will just fall in line because they'll come to accept all this stuff anyway, and so it'll become more commonplace. I think it's sort of it's the position of a lot of people that this is becoming more of a problem, and I do technically agree with those folks because the situation is self-perpetuating, and the only thing that will ever stop this process from taking place is really a recourse through the medical system and seeing it all kind of blow up in their face. But that also leads to the fact that this could go on for another 15, 20 years before any of that stuff actually comes out, because there aren't many long-term studies on all this stuff. So you end up with a bad position where neither side can really definitively say they're right or wrong, and instead they're just infinitely bickering back and forth. And the result of it is that they're going to set up laws eventually that fuck one side um, before they know what the reality is.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I can tell you from a logical position, I look at the transgender stuff as sort of, um, the reality is I've known people in passing who are definitely transgender in the fact that they consider themselves born in a different body, that kind of whole shtick. But they will tell you that they have gender dysphoria. They have this issue, this
Okay.
mental problem that causes that. And I've known 2 or 3 people, well, 3 technically, that were that way.
Yeah.
One of them I kind of very passing. But I'm one of them I only knew for like a couple weeks. The other 2 I worked with previously, so
Okay.
I got to kind of get to know them a little bit better, and that's the position they held. So then and that was back in 2016. I was working with those people, so I was fine with it, and it was what it was. I came to realize, okay, this is a bit of a different situation. They clearly have something they have told me openly is a mental issue. And then I go forward a couple more years, and it's the opposite. Now everybody has gone, okay, no, this isn't a mental issue at all. In fact, if you're transgender, you have to be sort of coddled and protected. And it's like, okay, well, I don't have to be coddled and protected, right? Because I don't have a mental issue. If you attack me online, you attack me in the media, you do something to me on the internet, or you yell and protest me, it doesn't do anything to me. I don't give a shit, right? So clearly, if this group of people has to be coddled and protected from this activity, then any other normal person is perfectly fine with handling. Then they do have something going on here. And that has not been addressed whatsoever by the left. The problem is the right isn't really addressing it either. The right's response to that is, well, they're all crazy and that's the end of it and it's not a real thing. And it's like, well, no, I know there is this mental thing that people can have that causes this issue. That is a reality. Now, it's also true that makes up a minuscule amount of the population. But the left would have you believe that it's these grotesquely large percentages of the population. Like there's, oh well, we're, you know, with the reaction the media and all these corporations and shit are doing, you'd think that there were 30% of the population was trans, but it's not. It's we're talking about in result of the whole U.S. population, what is a handful of people.
Yeah, definitely. It's not a large amount of people. I'd say gender dysphoria definitely exists. What I will say is, interestingly enough, um, I attribute a few things to it. I'm going to say gender dysphoria exists, and there are always people who probably will want to transition or get what the left calls gender affirming care, which I think is a very weird play on words. I look at their semantics because I guess George Carlin's not around, so I'll do that. So yes, there are people who are transgender. That's fine. If you want to be an adult and decide, hey, I want to transform my gender and use hormones to feel like whatever, you know.
Well, see, but I do think it's important to ask the question because I'm perfectly. That's the position I hold. If you're an adult, you can do whatever the fuck you want.
Yes.
It's the kids that I have an issue with at this point that I will take a stand for against. But I would I would like to answer the question, and I'd like to see somebody put this answer forward. Is why is it that there's more transgender adults now than there ever were before? Why is this now more a popular thing?
Why is
I
it?
don't care that these people are doing it, but let's expand on that and ask why is this
I
happening?
have a
And
theory. I have a couple theories. I can't prove this, but
yeah, we can get into the more conspiratorial side of
it's
it
not even
because I do.
conspiratorial. This stuff is not that actually hard to find. This isn't even conspiratorial at this point. I mean, some people would say. There's social trends on TikTok, on social media apps, on everywhere that make it in billboard ads, everywhere. There's everywhere that make it cool. Like if I see, and people fall for trends. Like I played Pogs, I had yo-yos. I didn't get into Furbies, but my friends did, and they cussed at me. So people go for trends. I did too. Market trends. People went for pet rocks. So I should have done that and made $1 million or a couple, whatever the guy made. Just from saying here's a pet rock, but whatever. Maybe I'll do that in the future. But people will go for trends. So there's social conditioning that makes it a popular trend. Oh, it's cool. It's hip. Look at these.
Right.
Look at this person. Oh, all these celebrities have trans kids, which
Yeah.
you know,
Especially when you're talking about the public school systems and you've got a lot
yeah.
of
What are you?
young adults, young teenagers.
Yeah, public school pushes the ideas too. Indoctrination camps pushes the ideas.
Well, it's not even just the schools themselves pushing that idea. It's if you've got a bunch of kids who are all 13, 14, 15, 16 years old in the same building, and you've got this culture outside of the building, then all of those kids are going to be talking about that stuff anyway. And so it's all going to be in the culture within the schools.
Right.
It's not just the teachers, it's not just what they're reading, stuff like that. It's actually permeated the culture itself.
Yes, it's got into the culture, so that's one thing. There's social conditioning, and you can't discount that. And a lot of people are using TikTok now, and I think that's something that a lot of adults, teens, and kids are affected by, more so younger people, but still.
I think just the internet in general
Yes.
has done that.
Now, the other reason. Why do I think that? There's a lot. Well, there's the joke Alex Jones made about the frogs. Now, I get there's a lot of, even for me, like take me for instance. I work out sometimes 3 times a day. I take time, like I don't eat bad food. I try and be relatively healthy. Like I think I put the extra foot forward to not be in a bad situation. But even with that, like my testosterone levels are not super low, but they're not super high. And I like try and go the extra mile to get that, like ashwagandha herbs, things like that. Even like I'm trying more stuff. There are so many things, in my opinion, that are very, very bad in the environment for hormones. And hormones don't dictate your gender, but they'll dictate what you think. So what I would say is your primary sex or your primary genitalia makes you female or male. But what will make you a man is testosterone or estrogen. And I think that's fair enough to say. If you are low in testosterone, or in high in estrogen, even if you're a dude, you'll act like a chick, vice versa. So I think the problem is society has over processed foods and things like BPA's, plastic that mimic xenoestrogens, which is a fake estrogen in your body. On top of that, we're living more sedentary lifestyles. On top of that, there's issues, in my opinion, with the food, the water, the air, just,
Right.
you know,
Yeah, I mean, I'll add on to some of this. I think that you're spot on with both of your kind of reasonings. I think that the food is something I've brought up before, and it's like, yeah, I mean, I don't exercise all that often. I try to walk around and do that, just kind of stuff. And I work a desk job, so that's just hard in general. But the reality of like the food over here is like, well, I cook a lot at home. I make a lot of beef and meat is what I typically try to cook. But I've definitely noticed that there's just a general like, problem in the way that the food processing and everything like that. There's just so many chemicals being put into things that no one has any clue what they are, and you can constantly read reports from other countries where those exact same chemicals are being banned because they're found to do something that we won't know about over here for another 20 years. So it's very
exactly. Yeah, it's really, really bad. On top of that, it's not even just the food. I can tell you, in my opinion, drinking out of plastic bottle, which I do
yeah,
a little bit,
there's tons of that stuff
air
too. Like
fresheners.
yeah,
Like, I know I sound
plastic.
crazy. Like, oh, you say, I'm not saying that. Here's what I think happens: there's air fresheners, plastic bottles, all this, junk and xenoestrogens in the environment. You're going to be exposed no matter what you do, unless you're an anarcho primitivist, living with the huts. Even then, maybe you'll be exposed to it because stuff gets in water and things happen. So even if unless you're living a primitive lifestyle, which you wouldn't be watching this on a computer, and there's EMF, which I know me and you can disagree on, EMF exposure and what it potentially does in terms of oxidative stress. But all these environmental toxins exist. They lower your testosterone. You don't think you're a dude, but you're not thinking necessarily like a very manly dude. Like you can see when people are high in testosterone or high in estrogen, there's a fundamental behavioral change. Even Blair White has talked
Right.
about that. So when you have the stage set, when you're thinking, when your hormones are off, your thinking patterns are going to probably, it's a scale to me. And if you're more on one scale, and then there's social conditioning pushing you to, oh, maybe I'm not this, then your hormones could be messed up. Then you could conclude from that deduction that I'm a dude who should be a chick or a chick who should be a dude
Right.
because my hormones are messed up. The social
Well,
conditioning
I
is
think
affirming what is going on in my mind and my body. So that leads to all these.
right.
I'm
I think the food helps push people and everything else involved in food. The water, even plastic bottles, that kind of stuff. I think it pushes people towards a certain kind of mental state, and then on top of it, you've got the third wave feminism movement that I think did a lot of damage to the male community, which I think in turn spawned people like Jordan Peterson and those kind of folks, which, as much people give them credit for, I don't think did nearly good enough job repairing any of that damage.
I think
And
they
so you have,
helped get men to responsibility. They gave some good lectures. There's people in the manosphere. A lot of people follow.
I mostly think Jordan Peterson at this point is a bit off his rocker,
Yeah,
and I
things
think
I
that
don't think he's good at
his early
politics.
stuff is decent.
Yeah,
But
I liked his take responsibility. I don't like his political stuff. I like his psychology and philosophy stuff. I have my
right,
own, bones to pick with the psychological community, but I will say this. I think there is a need for something like that for young men because they get told a lot of things.
Oh, I definitely agree with
And
that.
that's
I
why
just don't
people,
necessarily know if it's Jordan Peterson.
and I'd be interested to know. I'm just curious, actually, Leighton. I think that's why a lot of men after Peterson quit talking about responsibility and kind of went more on the Daily Wire political side.
Well, yeah, I think that was doomed to happen because Jordan Peterson's message was not a message of be a better man. It was be a better man and also agree with the things that I agree with. And if you look at Jordan Peterson as some sort of hero prophet, which I think a lot of his followers did, then you're doomed to fail because eventually he's not going to meet your test standard. Remember that speech that that tweet that Jordan Peterson wrote to Ethan Klein, telling him that eventually the left, that because Ethan Klein from H3H3 Productions said that he was deleting an episode with Jordan Peterson because he didn't agree with it. It was back in the day.
Yeah,
So Jordan Peterson responded that eventually the people who are canceling individuals who you're supporting will eventually turn on you and cancel you. And that happened to Ethan. And everybody brought back up that tweet and rubbed it in his face. But here's the reality. The exact same thing falls for Jordan Peterson, right?
yeah,
Eventually, the people he supports, the people who are ultimately mostly on the right or politically neutral, and in the manosphere side of the internet, are going to fold in on themselves, and Jordan Peterson will be eaten along with them. Now, I think we already saw that with his descent of being a drug user who got addicted to narcotics, who got addicted to benzos, who is still, while addicted to those drugs, going around the world telling people how they should act and think. I think that's a disingenuous thing to do. I think the guy is a absolute absolutely folded under the weight of his own creation of the problem that he put forward as being the person to solve. I also think that most of his debates against feminism and things are things that we already got 5 years ago. We just didn't get them from a guy with a suit and tie who happens to be in his late 70s or 60s. So there wasn't this older person with some form of backing saying it. It was 20 and 30-year-olds on YouTube, people who already had been making videos talking about the same exact thing Jordan
yeah.
Peterson said 10 years before
You
him.
know who made the
So
best
it's like,
videos for that? They're hilarious. She's actually on the left. Check out a creator named Shoe on Head. She's like
oh,
hilarious.
I know who
Yeah,
Shuanhead
Shoe
is.
on
Yeah.
Head's freaking like her critiques of feminism were the best. Sargon of Akkad did a decent job, although Sargon.
Sargon said every single thing that Jordan Peterson is saying today 10 years before he said it.
Yes, which is to me kind of
And
funny.
it's insane.
People are like, oh my
And we're
god,
like,
Jordan Peterson's saying things that are so revolutionary. I'm like, actually,
by the way, Sargon isn't perfect either. He's done a lot of bad stuff back in his day that he'll admit to, but the reality is that Sargon is not trying to create a fucking messiah situation where he's followed around by a bunch of people who need him as some kind of cudgel for them to get support from. He's just a content creator, and he has been for a very long time. So it pisses me off when I see all the kind of push towards Jordan Peterson as this kind of figure. And it's like, yeah, I don't know. Like Kevin Samuels, rest in peace, said everything that Jordan Peterson did before him. There's been multiple black anti-feminist figures who have done the exact same
oh
thing,
yeah,
who did the exact same speeches of Jordan Peterson. So it's nothing new. The difference is he ties it into religion. It happens to be a religion I don't really buy into, and so there's that on top of it. I think that basically now that he's with the Daily Wire, he's just become a mouthpiece for the pro-Zionist movement, and that is what it is. But that's unfortunate. It's unfortunate that he sold out and took a check, because that's exactly what happened. Um, and he'll be able to fall back on his laurels till he dies, saying that, well, I got canceled and so I had no choice, and people will go along with it. But he did it because of money. That's why all of these people did it. It's the same reason why fucking every other speaker goes around and tours. They make money. They write books. They get paid.
yeah,
That's the game.
yeah.
Uh, but yeah, I think other
You
than
know,
that,
you
yeah,
know,
I
you
think
know who you need to go to, Leighton, for real inspiration now that Peterson's fallen? I'll give you a hint. What color is your Bugatti?
oh god. Andrew Tate is just a ripoff of Andrew Tate is a ripoff of Dick Masterson. I don't know if
I
we've
think
ever
so.
talked about.
Okay. I'm not a
Have
fan.
we ever talked about Dick Masterson?
No, I don't think.
Oh
Do
god.
you, what
Okay,
I
we
was
might have a
I was
video to
curious
react
what
to
your
then.
opinion of Tate was, because I know you follow stuff. Because
Well, I think I think that's literally actually legitimately my take. He was on the Dick Masterson show before he was Andrew Tate, before he was like wildly famous. Dick Masterson created this character that was a male chauvinist back in the day, to trick the producers of Dr. Phil. And he actually got on Dr. Phil in character as this guy named Dick Masterson. His That's not his real name, but still to this day, that's what he uses as his broadcast name.
so you think
And
Tate was playing a persona as Dick Masterson to
I don't think Tate's playing a persona. Tate is clearly playing a fucking persona. Tate is a trained athlete who has experience being on a stage and making a character and making himself seem a certain way. And I do think that he did the cam whoring business, and he made a lot of money from it, and he invested that money into casinos and shit over there in the country that he was living in. And that was probably a good idea. He probably invested his money very well. The mistake he made was literally publicly calling out the government and telling everybody on the internet that they're corrupt and they won't do anything to him. Because guess what? Now they have to do something to you.
well,
You've put them in a position where every other country and every illegal criminal across the US or any other country for that matter will start looking at that place as a place they can go set up shop because you've publicly said that you can just pay off the legal system. And so he forced their hand. And on top of it, I've heard recordings of the guy admitting to the fact that he was holding women's passports, that he was keeping tax documents and things like that. And
here's
the reality is that is the exact same thing that some other people in the liberty movement with the whole Acapulco stuff and shit like that, Anarcho Poco got in trouble
Jeff
for.
Berwick. I heard did that.
It's the exact same
Yes,
thing.
I heard Jeff
And I'm
Berwick.
like, I'm not touching that with a 10-foot fucking pole.
All right.
We know what happens there. Like you can't do that shit. And like the idea that any woman, regardless of their profession or what contract they've signed, is going to have their paperwork taken from them so that they can't leave the country they're in or fly on a plane, regardless of whether you're like, well, I gave it to them when they needed it. It's like, well, no, it's their documentation. Like that's the reality of it. So there's
All
some
right.
stuff there I don't agree with,
There's
but
stuff
I think
I don't agree
his
with. I don't.
I think his like message is ultimately one that, much like Jordan Peterson, is nothing new. It's something that has been, done over and over again. And I do think the character was sort of ripped off from a bunch of different other content
Yeah,
creators.
there's a lot of things about him I don't like. His advice on women, stuff like that, like tear through a bunch of chicks, do this, part it up. That's not good, especially if you want to say you're Muslim. It's not a good idea to do. Um, that and some perspectives I don't like, but I don't think that I think you should be allowed to criticize the government and say, hey, come here. I don't think they should indefinitely hold you if you've not committed a crime. I think that just being objective there, that I don't agree with everything anyone said doesn't mean I should hold them in a cell. Um,
Right.
that being
I'd
that
agree.
being said, my understanding how they got him is there's a lover boy law, and I haven't looked into how the mechanism works, but I guess he said to women, "Hey, just do the cam thingy and make money on my site. It's strictly business." And it might have been, but then there might also have been the issue where they said, "Oh, it was about romance too," and then I think they can get you on that. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly how. I think we talked about this before. I think that's how they got him, though. If I am I correct?
Yeah, I believe
They're like,
so.
well, he told me there was a romantic thing involved. It wasn't just a cam girl. Oh, well, let's get him with the lover boy law. Now, clearly, they're doing this not out of any sense of justice, not out of any sense of, oh, we have to help someone, but they're just holding him to hold him. So that is objectively wrong. Just because I don't agree with everything anyone's ever said doesn't mean I should haul away to a jail cell indefinitely.
Right. I agree with that. I'm skimming this footage here because I found the episode that Dick Masterson was on, so I could play some of it. But
So
basically,
you think if you just theoretically hung out with him, you just like, hey Leighton, what's up? Here's some cool things in Romania, all this stuff. Here's my car. Yeah, I'm chilling. This is my girlfriend. And you think when he gets like the TikTok and Instagram stuff is like, you need to have a sense of purpose. You need to, do this.
no, I think he's a rich dude scumbag who does not care about any of the stuff that he talks about because talking about that stuff is what gets him paid. He realized that he could move from being a pimp and cam whoring to making money on the internet being a figure.
He's an influencer.
Yeah, and then it worked. Like, I see fucking 13-year-olds watching that guy's stuff, and it's like, I'm sorry, but it is going to be bad long term. Like, that dude's message is not necessarily what you want the youth hearing, because it's not a positive male message. It's not.
No.
He makes it seem like some of it is, because it is, but the reality is about half of what he spews is horse shit. You should not have your fucking your young kid listening to. And I do legitimately think it was just a ripoff of Dick Masterson's character. I have a video here we can watch a little bit of before we close out.
All right.
That I believe is his interview, but he was on like multiple episodes. He played a character. So I'll show you Dick Masterson what he looks like now. And so this will give you something to compare it to. Because he looks totally different now. Which is funny, Yeah, this is what he looks like now, so this is a good representation of it. Here, this is him on his regular show, which is the Dick Masterson show. So that's what he looks like now. But this was back in the day when he did this.
Ooh. The other way. Now, we've got, what are you, Joe Cool over here with the sunglasses on?
Hey, come on. It's all in the mustache, right?
Yeah. What's up with the sunglasses?
Well, there's a lot of women here. I don't want to get any pregnant, so I like to keep some protection on them.
Yeah.
I don't want to give them the look.
Yeah, I'm sure they'd be all over you. Stand up. So you can stand back up there. Stand on that thing, because that way you're not so short. Just curious.
I could grow my hair out and get some height.
Yeah, you could outgrow me on the hair. So you don't have much opinion of women, right?
Oh, I think I have plenty of opinions on women.
Yeah, but none of them are positive.
No.
So let's take a look at what they are, and then we'll talk to Joe Cool, or Dick. We'll talk to Dick. Take a look.
There's nothing more liberating and freeing to a woman than chauvinism. A woman has no responsibilities because I don't expect her to get anything right. All women are whores. They trade sex for money, they trade sex for cars. How is prostitution illegal, but alimony isn't? They're basically the same thing. You're paying for the whore to leave. A penny saved is a woman fired. Women make horrible employees. Women should not be allowed to vote. It's ridiculous. A woman president would be a disaster. Women know in their hearts that women cannot make decisions. A woman would never vote for Hillary Clinton. She embarrassed herself by not pleasing her man, essentially. And women know it. Well, women are only good for having kids. Unfortunately, they're not very good at raising them. Hitler was raised by a single mother. Men have created everything you see in the world. Men.
So explain to me how that is literally not Andrew Tate.
I mean, I don't think he goes that far. I don't think he's
100%. I've heard him say most of the exact quotes that he has said so far in this video. The Hitler was raised by a single mother. The women are only good for having kids. They're not capable of having responsibility. These are things that he has actively said. So it is literally the exact character, even down to the dressing, the way he dresses, and the cigars. It is the exact fucking person.
Men invented electricity. Men invented cures for diseases.
Every brick you see is there because a man put it there.
The only thing women really do with their time is spend men's money. Men, this is what you look like to a woman. This is all they're after.
Andrew Tate has said that exact quote. Women see men as ATMs.
Yes,
Women can't do math. They can't be organized. Can't lead a company. They can't take risks. They can't drive for crap. You can't blame women for what they do wrong in the same way that you can't blame a dog for what it does wrong. It's your fault for not training it properly.
There is no difference in my eyes. Now, the difference here is that fucking Dick Masterson is playing a role. It's a bit, right? What Andrew Tate is doing is the same thing, but he is progressing it as though it is factual and real, which it's not, and we all know it's not. But, the question is how much of that is true? How much of what Dick Masterson said there is true? Some of it certainly is. He wrote a book called Men Are Better Than Women. Dick Masterson did. He also created a website called menarbetterthanwomen.com, which is a forum that's still active to this day that writes articles about feminism. It's an anti-feminist, kind of WordPress site. So the reality is that there's nothing new about Andrew Tate, the same way there isn't about any of these other manosphere people. They just come along, they rip off the last guy, and then portray it as activity that's new. Dick Masterson did that on Dr. Phil way, way, way back in the day. And a lot of the manosphere people kind of just said, that actually, most of what he said is true. Men will go along with it, and I can just run with it. So they did. And it worked. But it's one of those things where I'm like, yeah, I don't know. I don't fall for it. Like, I think you can have some of those beliefs, and you can want, like, the trad wife and all that kind of stuff. But you don't have to be Andrew Tate, and you don't have to act like him. We're getting pretty close here. I got work in like 40 minutes, so I should probably close this out.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Well, I will talk to you guys later. Hope everybody enjoyed. This will be one that people will catch on the restream because it's late for most people who watch the show. So, but yeah, I will take it easy, and Kareem, peace.